and People's Magazine's second most sexy man in the world, Chuck Hughes. Come on up, Chuck. I guess we don't say that in the restaurant business. Come up, Chuck. Huh?
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, you try and avoid that as much as possible.
Hey,
I get the big couch.
Yeah, why don't you
Should
sit?
I lie down
you can lie
for the
down
session?
Well, whatever you need to do. Don't worry about it. You know, it's interesting. It's thank you for coming in and sitting in our pretend living room with us tonight. And
thanks for having me.
So you're a celebrity chef. What the heck? How do you become?
Is this a roast?
How do you become a celebrity? Wait, do we have the clip? We have proof that he's very telegenic and he's very successful as a chef. Do we have this?
I want proof.
Do we have this?
Now let's get
Can
up
we
to
play
the
it?
chairman's table and get this
Oh, man.
show on the road.
Chef Hughes, how was your first experience in Kitchen Stadium?
Amazing. It's an honor to be here, and it's, you know it's going to go by fast, but it goes by a lot faster than you think. So this is a little bit of a taste of Montreal. Hopefully you enjoy.
Very good. Please tell us about your first course.
First course is our appetizer, which is a drink and a little lobster roll. This is a Montreal classic. It's called a Bloody Caesar. It's made with clams and tomato. There's also some lobster broth in the drink. And along with that, you have the traditional lobster roll. There's tons of herbs in there, some homemade mayonnaise.
Oh, it's perfectly toasted, and you really get the meatiness of the lobster in here.
Chef.
Second course, lobster poutine. So there's no more Montreal dish than this right here. It's really our pride and joy. We made a lobster gravy, and you have cheese curds and fries and pieces of lobster.
I like the idea of lobster poutine, but I don't like the pairing of cheese and lobster.
Chef. All right, well, what you have here is lobster and onion ring salad with carrot butter and avocado.
I've had so many different types of lobster salads in my life that, you know, this was a very unique presentation and combination. It was interesting to have the textured crunch of the onion ring, and I would have liked to have seen more of this delicious carrot butter.
Chef.
All right, lobster risotto, obviously lobster stock, and lobster mushrooms. This is like
I thought this was the
lobster
short
over
clip.
lobster with lobster.
This should be super lobster, shouldn't it?
This is super lobster.
We get to the point where he wins.
So let's go find out whose cuisine reigns supreme.
Today, two champions met and battled Canadian lobster here at Kitchen Stadium. Chef Hughes. Irish Chef Flay. The judges have spoken. And the winner is... Chef Hughes.
Now let's get up to...
Okay, so where was that? When was that? Where?
Now I need therapy.
Yeah, no kidding. So what is that to look at yourself like that? Is it cringeworthy?
Not
or
great,
you
not
like,
great,
No,
yeah.
really, why?
No, I don't know. It's one of those things. I actually never really watched that episode. It was a while ago. I don't know how many years, but probably like 12 years or something like that. And at the time, I didn't understand why they would invite me in the first place, because I'm like, isn't there other people that are more important that deserve this? So just being invited made me extremely nervous. I got to go to Food Network in New York for the first time and meet, you know, Bobby Flay and Morimoto and all these chefs that I admired, and so it was really, really nerve-wracking. And kind of in a true Canadian fashion, when I won, I felt like, oh, why did I do that? Like, I came all the way here, and I had to do this. Now they hate me. And I remember on the plane home, I felt like, at the time, I was like, people are going to expect Iron Chef food. People are going to expect too much. This is not good. In retrospect, it was great for my career. And it was an amazing experience, and it definitely propelled me into another kind of sphere in terms of cooking and kind of getting that stamp. But at the time was very nerve-wracking, and there was a newspaper article that came out. I'm not going to name the person, but Leslie Chesterman. She wrote a super nice article on the whole experience. Right. And at the end, it wasn't really a quote from me, or it was something along the lines of like, you know, Bobby Flay didn't look happy when he lost, and it wasn't even anything bad or anything mean, or it wasn't. He's Bobby Flay, and he was clearly not happy to have lost because he takes it and it was just, you know, I remember getting an email from Bobby Flay and saying like, you know, I've been doing this for a long time. It was a great battle. It was, and you know, I don't know if I was that mad, but I'm like, Bobby Flay's explaining himself to me, so I was just like, it was just a weird time.
I think you should have a program on television called The Insecure Chef.
Yes.
Like, really? So this is so.
Yes.
I find this so interesting.
Well, I think a lot of chefs are like that because
really
nowadays everybody's got an opinion. And you can get like Google reviews and whatever, but there was a time where dishes would go out and you'd be in the kitchen, and if you have an open kitchen, it's like, you know, is table 2 liking it? Like they're making weird faces. Can you know? And then the waiter or waitress would go and, you know, ask, but you didn't really have. Now, I mean, you get too much feedback. The world that we live in is a little bit different, you know.
Well, going back to that television appearance, that life-changing appearance. Why do you think that you were invited there and that you've been able to stand out so much since then?
Very good question. We should do this for a living.
Because like you say, there are so many good chefs.
Yeah.
But what's that secret extra ingredient that you have?
I think at the time, television wasn't, you know, my first show, Chuck's Day Off, which was about 12 years ago, was a really real and kind of raw show. Because I had no idea what I was doing, and I'd never been in front of a camera. And for me, I didn't know TV, or I didn't know how to dress it up or fake it, or, you know, I look at episodes now, and even I had like these rental knives that I used to rent because I never owned knives. It's like, knives are expensive, and I work in a kitchen. It's going to get stolen. And I re-look at this now, and, you know, now everything would be perfectly chosen. Right. And so I think, at the time, I think I looked, you know, people had this idea of a chef with the white hat and the whites and this kind of French way of thinking of a chef, but really people look in kitchens a lot more like me. Yeah. Like jailbirds. And so I think at the time, you know, the first episode of Chuck's Day Off, there was a artistic director that was kind of, and we had a meeting, and I'm like, well, no, we don't need, this is the restaurant, like we don't need to add like fake stuff or lights, or, you know, for lighting of course, but not. And she's like, what are we gonna do about the tattoos? Like, are you gonna wear a long sleeve shirt? Or I was like, I don't know. Nobody said anything about this, and it was like a big concern. Like, we're gonna have to hide the tattoos. And then finally, I just, you know, wore a T-shirt, and, but I think at the time it was not known, or people didn't realize that most people that work in kitchens are not the chefs that are doing wine tastings and have the nice hats, and it's a lot of grinding, and it's exactly. Exactly.
So where did you learn to cook?
Juvie. No. No, I learned to, well, you know, you got to stay in school. That's my main message. I really loved cooking from a young age. I loved eating. I loved cooking. My mom really pushed me at a time where it really wasn't popular, or, you know, nowadays it's a little bit different. Cooking is kind of on a world stage. It's, you know, I meet kids that are 7, 8, 10 years old that want to work in kitchens. 30 years ago, it wasn't really that popular, but my mom saw something in me that obviously I couldn't sit at a desk or sit still for 3 minutes. So I think she saw the fit for me before I actually saw it for myself, and kind of naturally was always helping her in the kitchen. And my first job away from home was at 17 years old. I went to the Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta, and I was a busboy. And I remember going in the kitchen, and I saw the general manager of the hotel say to the chef, like, chef, permission to speak? And I went, what? I'm like, the general manager is asking this guy permission to speak? I'm like, wait a minute. I already loved food and cooking, but then when I saw, like, this, I guess the cooking, the real kitchen, the hierarchy, the team, the kind of the camaraderie, and I just right away came back to Montreal and had my first kitchen job at the restaurant Globe on Saint Laurent, which is so that's it's a while ago, and I mean, for me, was really a real awakening, I guess, and that's where I really learned the craft and loved it, and decided that that's what I wanted to do, and went to cooking school and traveled and cooked a little bit everywhere else, but really that was it. Like at 17, I kind of figured it out that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what that was going to look like necessarily. And that's it.
So now you have another cookbook out.
I do, yes.
And when we were talking
on sale right over there.
Yeah, on sale over there. It's almost free. We were talking on the air a couple of weeks ago. I got the impression that this was almost like having a second family, where you have time to enjoy the kids and so on. The first, like the other one was sort of done for you, and this is more of a personal thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first book was about the restaurant, and it was kind of not pushed on me, but I didn't really quite understand how it worked. And there was a whole team, they sent photographers, and we took pictures, and I was involved in the writing. Kind of like somebody would call me, and we'd tape it and then write it down. Then I would kind of scribble it, and so I worked on the books, but this time was really kind of all me with my best friend who happens to take pretty good pictures. And I really wanted to make a book that really reflects my life at home, and not too produced and not too there's kind of a trend right now in books that's like everything's very perfect, and the lighting and it's everything's kind of got that same feel, and my life is not like that. My life is I like to plate differently for different meals, or I'll serve different plates for different dishes. And so I wanted to be honest, I wanted to be real, and I wrote every last word of it, weirdly enough, on a cell phone, because I can't write on a computer. So I really wrote the book, from the intro to the outro to all the blurbs, and took all the pictures. I had my chef at the restaurant, Christopher Merrick, help me out with the writing of the recipes and figuring out, like, every recipe in my mind is very simple until you start putting it on paper, and you're like, what? There's so many steps. Even I was like, oh. So you want to kind of cut corners because you want to make it accessible, but you also can't really cut too many corners. So it's a book that reflects my life at home. So there's like Tuesday night meals. There's more involved weekend kind of dishes that I make for parties when people come over. My grandmother's ass pick. It's funny.
Yeah, I know this is.
Which is not an ass pick. It's more like a moose. But anyways, read the book. Well,
Before we get to some of the recipes in the book, though, I want to. You hot? You okay?
Those bright lights, baby.
Get
used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it, Chuck. So, when you talked about plating something at home, like when you're having dinner at Tuesday night, do you really you don't just throw it on the plate? You don't plate it like you're at a fancy restaurant.
Kind of.
You do. The presentation is still important.
Yeah, I feel like it is. I feel like it is. When I wrote the intro, having kids kind of changed my life. I had kids 10 years ago, and I haven't written a book in 10 years. So it kind of, changed my life in a whole lot of ways that I didn't really think it would. But more importantly, it kind of put me a little bit more in the moment and a little bit more focused and a little bit less all over the place, and kind of centered me a little bit, and having that basically almost 3 meals a day that I have to cook at home, not when they have school, but I still make lunch and snacks and all that. It's funny because I used to always get interviewed and like, so do you have any tips for moms at home? And I was like, no, like, or order takeout. I don't know. Like, I don't have kids. Like, I don't have time for this. Like, and I literally never cooked at home once before I had kids. And so I love it. I've kind of, as much as I love cooking at the restaurant, where I get to do that once in a while still, but it's very different. The restaurant is, it's all math. People don't realize that an actual professional kitchen is, you've got the calculator, you've got, the case of lemons that's coming in, you count the lemons, you make sure that you're getting every last dime out of everything, and there's the pressure of, service, and there's so many different things that, at home it's a little bit more loose in terms of, the customers are just as rough at home, but it's a little bit more loose, and the I guess it's a huge responsibility to cook for people in a restaurant, especially nowadays. There's so many restaurants. There's so many good places to eat. There's so many restaurants popping up in Montreal, and most of the times they're really good, annoyingly enough. So we kind of, you always have to fight, after 18 years to stay relevant and to still be there. You need consistency. You need to make good food, but, you need good service. You need the whole package. It's not just, and so at home, I can actually kind of do whatever I want and empty the fridge and work on something. Now it's, the restaurant business in itself, like any business, people always say, oh, the restaurant business is so hard. I mean, name me a business that's not hard today, right? Like business in general is more complicated. There's more hurdles for everybody.
Well, you made reference to trying to get the every last penny out of the lemons, use of all the stuff. And now, over the last few years, the price of food has become very expensive, especially for restaurants, because you're not buying the regular stuff. You're buying stuff that's really, really good. So how difficult has it become? What you get to the point where you can't believe the prices that you have to charge in order to make a living. The margins are smaller, and so it must be difficult.
It's kind of taken the fun out of it a little bit, to be honest, because we used to be able to call the fishmonger and say like, hey, I want to make a special tonight. What do you have? What can I get? And there's none of that free willy. Let's add a little bit of this, and like the pinch of salt is calculated. At a certain point now, everything is. So personally, and I've got a restaurant that's pretty busy, so I can't just make 4 portions of something. It's just there's no point, and now the clientele 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you went to a restaurant and you're kind of like, whoa, what's happening here? Like now people know what's happening. People cook a lot more at home. People are more knowledgeable about food. People have a better palate. People travel more. Like food traveling is a thing. Like people literally go somewhere to try a slice of pizza. So it's there's no longer this kind of restaurant industry kind of insiders tricks or whatever. It's like there's really, so you've got to add value, and things are expensive, and if you want to keep, like you mentioned, I have scallops that I've been buying from the same people for 20 years that literally go out and harvest scallops. I can't all of a sudden just buy frozen scallops from somewhere else. People are going to know. And that person, we don't think about that, but that person has been living off of their craft or of their harvesting of scallops for 20 years. We've built a relationship, and I don't want to buy because I know that these are, so the price, I'm buying more expensive stuff, which is basically what I used to buy for half the price, and I have to make a profit to cook another day, whether it's a smaller profit or, but that's been really the kind of the tough part, because it's put me in a price range that I don't want to be in.
Right.
I want to be, I want all walks of life, everybody, and I want to be accessible, but it's hard. It's really...
I wanted to get to some of the recipes in the book, but I have one more question. So going back to when you were less experienced, or even when you had more experience, what's the dumbest mistake you've ever made in the kitchen? That was really
How
a
long do we
disaster?
have? I've made many mistakes. Probably, one that just, mixing salt with sugar in desserts when it's not labeled properly. I've done
Yummy.
that, like 300 little chocolate torts, like that. That it was like the molten chocolate cake in like the 90s was like it's still delicious, but it was kind of like all the rage. And I remember I made like 300 small ramekins, all with salt. And and you always want to try one, and I was like, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars down the drain, and that's another, that day the restaurant may have not made any money because of my mistake, and that's another thing that goes into like, I literally don't have pine nuts on my menu anymore because pine nuts are like $100 a bag, and everybody burns them. It's like, that's the recipe. Take them, burn them, throw them out. Like, there's no, like, pine nuts rarely make it to the dish. They somehow they get forgotten, and it's like $70 a pan. So there's certain items I don't even like. Like celery used to be an afterthought. It's like $7. Like, you know what I mean? A case of celery is like $150. Like, it's celery. You know what I mean? Like, when's the last time you said like, it's like we put it in stock. So we basically buy it to throw it out. And I got to pay $150 for it. So yeah, it's not easy, but for all the young kids out there.
So if we go home with your book tonight and going to look at it the next couple, what recipe would you suggest for different nights? What comes to mind?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at the book in a while.
Because it's sort of
like
home.
I
Do you want to
can't
get a
even...
copy of the book for Chuck so he can
somebody
can
want to
jog
give me
his
a couple
memory?
pointers? Look,
Yeah.
I do. There's I can go in terms of like certain dishes, but there's also I'm even gonna get the cheat sheet, this like high school.
Well, I don't expect you to remember the whole thing.
But I have a section in there that I really like, and it's the Sugar Shack section, cabane à sucre.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
It's a whole. Basically, when I had kids, I had to like teach them stuff. I felt like, oh man, I need to. And so my friend who makes maple syrup, I think we all know how it's made, and we eat a lot of it. But when my kids were very young, we started making our own. We probably end up with a liter or two. Like it's really, a couple trees, 25 trees, a week and a half of work, and it's more about the actual process of making it and making something that we end up eating, and it's the whole experience, right? And
yeah,
and
it's also cool when you make something you don't make. Like I tried to make bagels one time. They're like these things that are or grilled octopus, things you don't usually make at home.
Yeah, it's fun
cool
to kind of push your, and so that was something that, I'd never done once before having kids. I knew how to make maple syrup. I've eaten it. I've cooked with it. But it became really something part of our, family life, and it became part of our springtime activities. We're always going to make maple syrup. So it took a pretty. There's a lot of good recipes in there. One in particular, it's these maple crepes that I like to make. The recipe is wrong. I mean, it shouldn't exist because it's too much, but it's delicious. And so basically, you make your crepes, you roll them up, and equal parts of butter and maple syrup melted together, and then you pour it, and then you bake that in the oven. So the sides become crispy, and it almost becomes like a caramel. Anyways, it's very simple, and it's decadent and really delicious. And that's one of those recipes that I make a lot. There's hot dog bun French toast. Sorry, I'm a teenager. It's finally coming out. I've got that's kind of one of my classic. In the summer we love to make hot dogs with the kids, but we always end up too many buns.
Yeah.
And what do you do? So French toast. I mean, you can't beat. And so now we actually buy hot dog buns just to make French toast because it's that good. Lobster, it's and like I said, it's not a 15-minute meals or cheap recipes for the whole. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And probably my favorite cookbook of all time is a cookbook called Martha Stewart Entertaining from 1989, where she was already a billionaire at that point. So, I mean, the book is visually stunning in her farmhouse in Connecticut, and it's basically unattainable for most people in terms of. But the idea behind the book was that it's kind of like her life, and it's real recipes that she makes, and it's not like tips and tricks or there's no gimmick really. It's really, and that's kind of what I wanted to make with this book, where I wanted to have a little bit of everything. But let's find another one here.
Do you mind answering a few questions from people in the audience? Anybody got a question for?
Absolutely not. I am an open book.
Do you need
Apparently not of any recipes I can remember.
Do you need a club soda or something to drink? You okay?
I'm good. I have it here, yeah.
Okay, we have a microphone in the audience somewhere, don't we?
Wow.
Somewhere? Who's got the microphone? Okay, that's Chris Berry's got the microphone. Put your hand up if you'd like to ask Chuck a question.
Tuna bolognese.
Tuna bolognese.
So basically, canned tuna instead of ground meat, and that's one that I'll make.
Really?
Yeah, it's so good. It's easy, cheap, and fast.
Yeah, it doesn't sound expensive
I said I wasn't that book, but apparently I'm a little bit that book.
Val,
Sorry?
You have a question?
Yeah. Hi.
I think I owe him money.
No,
No? Okay.
not yet.
Okay.
No, I'm curious. I saw you on television the other day on the French station working up north in the.
Yes.
How does that compare to what you've done? What got you up there in the first place?
This guy was planted for sure. This has to be planted.
No, I don't think,
No?
unless you planted him.
Very good question. So I think you're referring to Chuck and the First People's Kitchen, a show that I just wrapped my 5th season, and I just got a 6th season. So, yeah. In a nutshell, about 8 years ago, I was traveling the world learning about Indigenous people in other countries. And it kind of struck me that I knew nothing about Indigenous culture in my own country. Like, I speak more Spanish than Cree or Mohawk. I don't know, or at the time I didn't know many words, or I didn't know any words. And so I pitched the show to APTN, which is normally doesn't have any non-native hosts. But the whole point is that I'm coming from a perspective of somebody who wants to learn, and I know nothing, and I want to learn about food, about culture, and so now it's 7 years ago, so 5 seasons, about 7 years that I've been doing the show, and it honestly it's changed my life in terms of visiting these communities and meeting the people. And in the restaurant world, we have this, we use the whole animal and all this stuff that's not really true. Nose to tail and blah blah blah. Like it sort of happens, but not really. Every piece of meat is inspected by the government and stamped and in a box. And yes, you can buy the whole animal, but it's not really the whole animal. And so there was kind of that quest also for me of learning the actual using of the whole animal and having that. I'd never really hunted before. I'd gone fishing, but I'd never really hunted before. And I realized, as a restaurant owner, food is kind of a currency for me. It's, I sell food. I don't know how many lobsters I've served up or how many cows or what, pork, whatever, you name it. But I've never actually been face to face with one of them and so I also wanted to try that and see how that is. And so, yeah, it's been 6 years of my life where I've been to at least 70 different communities in Canada and the US. I've seen great things. I've seen not so great things. And the show is really about that. I go for food, but I learn a little bit about everything, and we don't shy away from the reality, but I try and find somebody in the community that's got somewhat a positive outlook and is looking towards the future and seeing how things can get better in a sense. Yeah. But yeah, it's been really life-changing.
Do you Andrea, do you have a question? Andrea Elias. Cindy Aikman is in the audience too, former CJAD staffer.
I have
Orla, you're hiding there. Orla.
I got
Orla Johannes.
Orla interviewed me.
Yes.
The first year of the restaurant.
Yes.
When you were doing that show with Mose?
No, actually, I think it was
on your show. You had a show on the radio.
Yes, Table Talk with Chris. Yes, another radio station. Yes, yeah. 18 years ago, we've known each other.
18 years ago, yes.
Still here to tell the tale.
I'm sorry for everything.
Okay.
I can't believe you didn't get dressed up tonight, Orla, to go out.
Just for you, Andrew. So here's my question. Chuck, what's your secret weapon when it comes to an ingredient that will take a meal from bland to next level amazing?
Salt. My man right there.
Salt?
No, I mean...
Any type of salt, celery salt, regular salt, Himalayan salt?
Good question. Salt. No.
Okay. Ketchup?
I think like without being coy or like kind of I think salt when used properly and not over salting and so I like to use different salts, but in general, just the use of salt at the right time, in the right moment, and in the perfect dosage really enhances. And that's what I realized, professional cooking, we season everything. We go and we'll season, whether it's with salt, pepper, or whatever herbs, we'll season along the way and we'll taste and we'll adjust. But at home, it's not something that people are so used to. And so definitely in the restaurant, like the first thing is seasoning, proper seasoning and not over seasoning and not going
well, what happens if you put too much salt in something? If you can't get the salt out?
I never complained about that. I'm like, I love salt.
Oh no, so I can't stand it when there's too much salt in something.
So you really have to kind of hit that perfectly. So I think that's really probably one of the.
But if there's no such thing as too much salt for you personally, then how could you taste it on behalf of other people?
Yeah,
and make sure that
it's
fine?
I'm working on that. I'm working on that. But I think more importantly is also harnessing the salt from certain ingredients that have it without having to add. So I think seafood is a great example of that. There's a lot of great saltiness, there's a brininess, there's already that flavor. So I think a lot of times what we'll do is we'll take the shells off and all these little things that are just packed with flavor. So I think using scraps, shells, bones, skin, any little thing, like at my house when I'm peeling vegetables, all that stuff gets used, whether it's in a broth, whether it's in a stock, or and I used to hear all these tips and tricks from people, and I was like, who really does that? And I've become that person
Yes.
that does.
The skin of the chicken bones, and butter.
Well, that was my next.
That's the pièce de la résistance.
So
butter.
in the book, in the first paragraph, I talk about how I only use salted butter, and that basically unsalted butter is not a thing. It's, even for pastries, people ask me, but what about for cookies? I'm like, oh, there's nothing better than salted butter for like cake or cookies. So I think using, using all those little extra things, like, chicken bones is a great example. People always roast a chicken at home. You can get a lot of mileage out of it, but more importantly, you get that flavor. So using the scraps, the bones, and harnessing kind of like, something I love to work with is dried mushrooms. Like, they're fairly inexpensive, and when you rehydrate them, you have a broth that's got, phenomenal flavor. And the mushrooms do have a little bit of a different texture. I feel like they have a little bit more bite, a little bit more, they'll hold up a little better. So it's all these little things, I think, that, create flavor. And then, layering in of, so you can throw everything in a pan and it will work. Yeah. But there's ways of developing that flavor without adding anything else. Yeah, so
people don't realize how important the different steps are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I will start with my onions and my garlic, and I'll cook, and then take it out. Then I'll put my meat. Then I'll add my ingredients, and I'll make sure that I'll use that same pan, not only because it saves on dishes, but you're creating flavor. So I think there's a couple things there, is like seasoning properly, using really all the elements. Shrimp shells. Like if you buy shrimp, might as well get them with the shells. There's your sauces in there. Yes. There's a soup there for the future. There's a little bit more, and then really kind of not necessarily following recipes, but following tried and true techniques that add flavor. So adding things in the right time and making sure that you cook them in a way that develops the flavor. Yes. And I think that makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
Joanne Brakis has a question.
Wow.
Hi, Chuck. How are you?
So, like real journalists. This is...
Get ready. Yeah. Big question.
I still remember when your restaurant opened all those years ago, and the scene has changed. We have many common friends in common. Those are stories for another day.
Yes. Not here, not now, please.
Not here, not now. Let's talk, though, about the restaurant scene in Montreal. We've become the sort of foodie city. Best restaurant in Canada is in Montreal. I want to know where you go. What are your go-to restaurants? Who are the chefs that you still look up to? But don't give me the regular L'Express, Le Méac, and get off the beaten path.
Snowden Deli.
Okay.
Yeah. Snowden Deli. I'll be honest, I'm kind of boring when it comes to that. And I like to go somewhere where I know what I'm going to get. Like, as much as I'm blessed that I get to travel a lot too and try other places. So when I'm in Montreal, I'm either at my restaurant or at my house. It's rare that I go out, but yeah, definitely the food scene has changed, and like I was kind of making a joke about it earlier, but that all these places open up and they're great. It's also the new generation of young chefs that they're pushing the envelope in a simple way, not simplistic necessarily, but they're really focusing on the past French kind of old school techniques of way of cooking are kind of not as, yes, there's certain things that you'll always do, but it's less relevant today, and there's more of a Quebec way of cooking, I guess, and it's super ingredient forward and kind of very honest and simple, and there's not much bells and whistles around it, but yet you're focusing on really good technique. And I think that's the difference now, is that there's so much knowledge in food. Like when I started 30 years ago, I would read my mom's like 5 cookbooks, and you know, there was no internet, there was no Instagram, there was no you know, we knew what we knew from what our chef was cooking, and then we would all hop in a car and go to New York for 2 days and you know, try some food and go look at what's happening. I think today there's, you know, there's so much inspiration, and there's kind of this knowledge that 30 years ago we didn't have. So I think they're pushing the envelope in a way that's more simple and harnessing like good flavors, and they're pulling it off, which in a world where we always want more and we need to add, and competition is fierce, it's pretty brave. And so yeah, best restaurant, like en route, right, was I was hosting the event. I should know this. No, that was so en route came out with the, every year they do their top 10. Yes, Sabayon. Thank you. Yes. I mean, it's 15 seats, so you don't really need to know it. Nobody's going to get in anyway. So, but Patrice Demers, you know, who's probably, you know, the closest, you know, to the top in terms of pastries. I mean, this guy is an artist. I mean, what he does, even his cookbooks, he's got it pretty involved cookbooks. Like, you know, look at the vanilla bean for 6 months and talk to your chocolate. And like, he's like, his recipes are, it's insane, right? He's an artist, and I think he's been on that list or part of that list like 3 or 4 times in his lifetime, and he's never won. And he literally has worked everywhere for the best people, and he decided to open a 15-seat restaurant where he's only open 3 or 4 days a week, so he can really focus on making amazing food. So, you know, when you have people like that are committed to their craft, it's like, kids kind of ruined my life in that sense, in terms of the restaurant. Like, you can be the best chef and be the best dad, but I don't think I mean, it may be possible, but, you know, being a chef and having your restaurant, and when you're you know, I 10 years ago, I had a kind of I'm way off topic, by the way, but anyways, it's not.
That was. We have another question. If you.
No time for questions.
Okay, you're.
But like 10 years ago, I had to make a decision. You know, am I gonna be like a lot of the chefs that I worked for growing up and never see my family and really be married to this restaurant and it's the end all? And like, you know, back when I started, people would literally, like, it's not a nice thing to say, but it's the reality. Like, if they lost a star, or, you know, there's a couple of chefs here in Montreal from back in the day that aren't here anymore because of these pressures of what we thought at the time, you know, was so important. But when I had kids, I realized, like, you know, I love my restaurant and it was my baby and it still is, but, you know, I have other people that are there that are younger than me that need more skin in the game, kind of. And so it's their turn to kind of take the torch. And, you know, am I still involved? 100%. Am I there a lot? Yes, but not in the same capacity as I was before. And, like, you know, having kids, I had to make a decision. It's like, am I gonna miss the boat on the kids thing? Or so it's a fine balance, but I don't think you can do both 100%, unfortunately. It's just the hours and it's always at night, right? It's always, and so yeah, I don't know. I forget your question, but that's the answer.
So we probably have time for maybe a few more questions after this one. But if any listeners want to ask a question, any guests here, because there's a lot of broadcasters and radio people, we can go all night. But
I have a question. Are you going to stop saying my name on CJAD now every 20 minutes?
Yeah. No, of course not.
I can't handle my
Are you
friends.
going to give me free dinner at your restaurant? That's a
if
deal
it stops,
that we have
yes. Everybody gets free dinner at
to.
McDonald's.
Yeah, we can. Just ignore the man on the stage. He's a little punch drunk.
No, I appreciate it. It's just that, like, it's more the heat that I'm taking from my friends. Like,
why?
They're like, dude, all I hear is your name on CJD all day long. Like,
Well,
when's
that's
this
good.
event?
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's what I think. But
So you're. I wanted to ask you while we wait for the next question. I want to ask you. Did you know what? Okay, Sarah DeHay, former producer of the.
Oh wow!
Show, is right there at the back.
Do you need new friends who will be supportive of you? Because I think we can find some people here.
I do.
I wanted to ask about being on TV. What kind of tips, advice do they give you when you were starting out? Like how to be a good chef on television?
So basically, good question. Basically, the opposite of being a real chef. And Chuck's Day Off was my first time in front of a camera. You know, we did a 5-minute demo, and they're like, "You've got the show. We're coming in a month, and and we're shooting." And cooking is fast-paced. It's everything needs to kind of happen all at once. You need to hustle and make things happen. And so I think that was probably the biggest thing. The first shot of me cooking, they're like, "Okay, why are you going so fast?" I'm like, "Well, that's what we do, right? Like, I hate chopping carrots. I gotta chop carrots. It's part of the job. Like, you get it done and you move on." And they're like, "Whoa, calm down. Why do you need a rag?" Why? I'm like, "It's my safety blanket. It's what I grab hot dishes with." It's like, I don't know. I've always had a rag. They're like, "You got to lose the rag. You got to take your time. And you've got to explain to us what you're doing." I'm like, "Freaking chopping carrots." But why? I'm like, "Because you can't put whole carrots in this dish." Like, they're like, "No, but speak to me about carrots." I'm like, "They're orange. They're long. They could be a nose for a snowman." I don't know. So it's like, I think that's the thing that the most how many times can you say a lemon is zesty? I mean, I don't know. Apparently a lot, but that's the difference. Is you need to describe everything. You need to take your time. All the things I'm not good at, basically. And so I had to kind of learn, and now I'm annoying at home. I'm like, "And there's beautiful cinnamon." My kids are like, "What? Just cook. Shut up and cook." But yeah, it's kind of it's like you think there's a learning curve, or that you're gonna get better at it, or you'll get used to it, and you don't. You just you learn the craft of cooking on TV, where if the camera's not there, well, it doesn't really exist. So you have to move, and you become more aware of what's going around, and how to be there at the right time and to sync with. But really, it's super counterintuitive. And for example, caramel waits for no one. I don't care if you're the Today Show or the biggest TV producer. Caramel's on its own timeline. So it's like, can you time it with a no? I can't. Be ready, and when it happens, and if we're 3 seconds over, we gotta wait another 20 minutes. And that's not TV. It's we'll have another one ready here, and if we screw it up, we'll start. No. Caramel is, it's caramel. And that's the beauty of it. You can't, I guess you can bottle it, but I mean, you can't, you can't just say get it ready and we'll. So I think there's that kind of makes it fun also, where, yeah, it's kind of fake, and, it's kind of produced in a sense, but there's also the reality of, you are cooking and things are happening, the like, you want to hear that sizzle and like all that stuff is like when you actually take the time to do it and be there and focus on it. There's something about it that I really love, cooking on TV. And I think the reward for me, kind of like at the restaurant, is when people love a dish or love something that you made and you see them take a bite and it's like, oh, or something like that. Like to this day, that's still, and I think that's the show Chuck's Day Off, where still it's 12 years ago, people stop me on the street and, that recipe that you made, it's like became a classic. I never cooked before, but I started cooking watching your show. Like to me, those are like the rewards of the how-to cooking, as opposed to, the chopped and the competitions, which are okay because they put people on the map, but it's not the same as, I still love watching cooking shows. And unfortunately, there's less and less on TV now, and there's a lot more competition than there is actual. So I miss that, and I'm trying to get back into that, where food has evolved since the 12 years that I've done. And when I look at stuff, you do something different every day, really. And so, yeah, I think cooking on TV is the complete opposite. And at first I was like, I'm not going to survive, and this is not going to happen. Like, you keep on asking me every step of every onion cut, and like, I don't, and you realize like, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is how I've done it forever. And so you kind of get better at it, but you really don't ever get really used to it. Is your cooking show coming out soon, or now you can roll with it? Yes.
Maybe the last question over here from Jonathan Chung. Appetite for books?
Oh. Wow.
Hi, Chuck. I'm a big fan.
Oh.
I have a two-parter. After 5 seasons of being of doing your show and being immersed in the Indigenous culture and cuisine, and which I think is super important for us to learn about. What's one of the things with Indigenous food that really resonated with you in terms of techniques or ingredients or whatever? Part 2, has it changed how you approach food, at home or at the restaurant?
Yeah, well, good question. And it has definitely changed my, for me, you might want to take that. No? Okay. Like my relationship with food was always like, how can we make this taste good? How can we sell it? How like there's, it's like I always have a motive. I always have, it's just, I've been working in the kitchen and restaurant industry for so long. It's like, it's kind of like, I didn't really have a relationship with food, besides like, okay, let's make it taste good. Let's make it. And in Indigenous culture, it's the complete opposite. It's like, it's the actually harvesting of the animal. That's the big part. And then like, when we actually have the animal, okay, now we need to get it out of the woods. People who don't go hunting and that can comment on a Facebook post or, oh, that's barbaric. It's like, but you're eating like a Happy Meal in your car, like somebody did your dirty work, Anybody that's eating meat, like at one point that animal had one bad day, like, like it's kind of something we forget. And I think that's the one thing that for me was like, the second you get a moose or deer or whatever, it's like, okay, single moms, the elderly, handicapped, people who can't go out, people that can't get the meat. It's like you go down a list of, and like the hunter's the last guy that's gonna get a piece. Or so it's completely different relationship that I have with food. It's like, come on in, stamp it, cut it, flavor it up, and this is completely the opposite. And having not killed a moose myself, but been there, and it's so emotional, and it's definitely made me eat less meat. And yeah, because like when you run after a moose for like 3 days, 40 kilometers on foot, you finally see it eye to eye. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, don't shoot him. I've become friends with this guy. Like I know his poop, you know. I've touched his poop. I found his hair on the trees. I'm like, I feel like we've got something, me and this guy now, and like this guy's. And it's always super emotional, and it's something that you don't see in the hunting shows. And there's this kind of macho whatever that's half the time really not part of the experience. It's really more of a super touching and an emotional experience. So I think it's made me respect meat and the use, even though like coming from a restaurant perspective, you know, it's yes, we use the whole animal or the bones or whatever we can, but it's like for money, and because we need to, not from a, you know, from a perspective of giving. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that relationship with food and meat and even leftovers. And I know the work that goes into harvesting that, you know, I it's not like I threw away food and stuff, but even more now, the conversation is, you know, all the hard work that goes into it. And I kind of had that idea too of like hunting. Well, you get a gun, you go out, but no, it's really not like that at all. And you know, you need money, you need gas, there's a lot that goes into it. So I definitely learned a lot. And what was part 2? Yeah, well, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like in that sense, you know, it's, I won't eat meat anywhere anymore, and I won't just like, I'll try and eat less of it, and every time I look at something, I know that, you know, there's somebody did the work, an animal lost its life for me to be able to, and it's something that we're so disconnected from in the cities, you know. And look, I'm guilty of it too. I have a family, and I have a budget, and I go to Costco, and you know, I hide the weird stuff under other stuff because I don't want people to look at me and go like, I saw Chuck Hughes at Costco and he bought the salmon stuffed with
the
crab.
scalloped potatoes, the pre-prepared.
Yeah, there's one dish, like a prepared dish. It's like salmon with like crab balls in the middle. It's so dirty. It's like, I can't be seen buying that, but I love it. You know what I mean? Like, I love it. So it's like, it's just, there's just certain things, you know, it's just changed a lot of, but like, you know, I have a budget like everybody else. I need to make, but I try and make better choices, and I try and, you know, even though we do that at the restaurant because it's kind of a social responsibility and we have the customer paying for it, you know, unfortunately, it's like, you know, I can buy better things, and I can encourage better, you know, fishmongers and farmers, and encourage the best of the best, because, well, it's you know, we're selling it. But at home, as much as I want to do that, I'm also kind of like everybody else on the budget. So I've definitely made more informed and educated decisions when it comes to just buying stuff at random, and a lot more respect for animals and meat in general when I see all the hard work that goes into harvesting. It's pretty insane, yeah.
Chuck, you brought some gifts for everyone in the room. Did you know that?
I was aware.
Actually, if you
my people.
If you had the turkey focaccia from our friends at Cafe Baristello, that they use Chuck's products every day. So you're all going to go home with either antipasto, eggplant jerk sauce, peppers, olive oil.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
Everybody, yes.
So
yes.
these are made in your kitchen by you, right?
Pardon me?
These are made in your kitchen by you.
By me, yes.
At home.
Yes. Barefoot and la, 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 la.
Singing.
Yeah.
That's great.
No, they're not. And that's, you know, they're all my recipes and
of course.
but they're done by somebody that's
Is it kind of weird seeing your name and your face on, like, for instance, we're going to draw for this cast iron
nice.
collection, this Dutch oven.
It's like
is it weird seeing your face on the package like
a
that
little bit, but I get used to it. I mean, this is if you want to knock off Creuset, I mean, this is it right here. I mean, this is it's a third of the price. And
so, what do you make? What do you make it? What would I make? I see these things all the time. I have no idea what I would make in it. What do you make in it?
So this never leaves my stovetop.
Really?
This is on my stovetop, and this is where I'll cook pretty much anything in there. When it comes to like stews or soups.
And what's so good about it? Because it's so thick, it doesn't burn. Is that it?
Yeah, it's got a really good heat distribution. Yeah. I came prepared for this one. No, but it's kind of like it's almost like an heirloom piece in your kitchen, right? Like the Creuset is like an iconic brand, but like a Creuset like this is like, I don't know, $800. So they're not necessarily that affordable, and this is
right.
This is comparable in quality, I would say, but a lot more affordable. But like, I just leave that because it looks really nice, and so it's kind of I like to just have it there at all time. And if I'm gonna cook pasta or make a soup or anything, I'll use that. So it becomes kind of like your go-to.
We're gonna draw for a winner now.
The more you use it, the better it gets.
Really?
Yeah. So somebody's gonna win that here right now.
Yeah, you're gonna draw. Dig deep and move around. Move the hand around. Okay, good luck. These are the red tickets that you were given when you came in.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you read it?
I'm old. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. But I can.
I have to say this number.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 934. 074. Oh wait, no, 76. No, I'm joking. Congratulations. Yeah, of course. I hope you've got like at least a 15-minute speech prepared. You don't? Okay, let's see. I don't really trust him.
You could check that. I believe him. I don't think he tried to defraud us for one of your.
There you go. Thank you.
Now, if you haven't seen Chuck's new cookbook, it is absolutely gorgeous and very simple. Like when I say simple recipes that are not weird. They're accessible, they're fun, and they're nice. And
some are weird, but accessible.
You could buy copies of Chuck's new cookbook right here at the entrance, and he will sign them. Apparently, you're going to sign them too.
Oh yeah, every last one with any special messages, anything you want.
It'll give you another chance to engage. Chuck Hughes not very engaging, very compelling. It'll be lovely.
Thank you.
And the CJAD 800 teams around here as well for a little while. So. Is there anything else?
One last question.
Just wanted to think.
Come on.
Question? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who wanted to write their own cookbook? Where would you start?
Yeah, call me if you want to know what not to do. That's a good question.
Become famous and then write a cookbook.
I mean,
is that the order?
Easy. I mean, that's the thing. I think food on its own can warrant a cookbook. So I don't think famous I think it's doable without.
But just to get to the publishing point is
it's
unique connections,
not
right?
Easy.
No, it's not easy.
That's not easy, but I think. From what I know now, from how to put books together, is you need a dish that obviously that's something that you want to share with people, but you need a story, and so there needs to be kind of a package and not just a recipe, but a little bit of a history behind it, a story behind it. So I think there's the recipe writing, which is to me brutal. because in my mind it's like, it's this, it's that, and it kind of comes together. So there's a really kind of regimented, and you've got to test your recipes, and so there's almost like, I don't want to say scientific process, but there is some there's the art part, but there's also the actual recipe part that needs to be pretty fail-proof, I guess, if you will. So there's a lot of testing, and there's a lot. So to answer your question, I have no idea, but you know, I think publishers, if you had a project and the recipes were written and every dish had some sort of a story with a little paragraph on why and how and what, and you had basically the setup for a book, I think it would be really appealing, and you know, that's kind of like all the hard work. So I think, you know, choosing the recipes is hard. Writing the recipes is there's a process, but I think if you have that package, in a sense, that almost all the work is done. But yeah, I don't know.
Very
Good
hard
luck.
Must be very hard to stand out on the shelves, I would think. We have another question in the over here.
First of all, thanks for being here. It's an absolute joy to
Well,
watch
no,
you.
thank you for being here.
Secondly, and it's probably a question everybody wants to know, are you hiring?
I'm firing a lot.
You're firing.
I'm firing a lot these days. Hiring, not so much. No, it's a good question in the sense that, you know, also the cooking world has changed a lot, and like I said before, like, people are very demanding and people know food a lot more, but there's also this other side of food now where people have a lot of allergies, a lot of dislikes, and a lot of, you know, general weirdnesses that, you know, we have to deal with. And it's funny because the hiring part, you know, you can't just hire somebody and put them on the floor and like, this guy has great personality, he knows food. Yeah, but does he know our food? And does he know what we do and how we make stuff? Because now, and it's great because it's pushed restaurants and chefs and to be more transparent and to know more about the food. Front of house now needs to know exactly what's in this dish because people can get violently ill, you know, from, you know, either allergies or, so there's a lot that goes into it nowadays. So the short answer is yes, I'm hiring, but the longer answer is, you know, where did you work? Do you know your wines? You know, there's a whole list there of elements now that we need to kind of have the whole package. And it's something 20 years ago, like somebody would say like, I'm vegan. I'm like, hey, I hope they find a cure. Just leave me alone. You know, like, I don't know, like, you know where the door is. Like, it's just, you cannot do that anymore. Gluten-free, celiac, people have cards, literally cards, like business cards of their allergies. And it's like seafood. I'm like, what are you doing in my restaurant? Like, you know what I mean? So yes, I'm hiring, but, you know, there's a lot that goes into that today more than, I'm just saying, you're just not going to cut it. It's just not going to. How's your dishwashing skills?
Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Hughes and his book
Thank
is
you
available.
so much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank
it's
you.
been really great. And make sure you stop for a CJAD 800 prize pack on the way out, as well as your little jar of
and this is for you. Olive oil and rags. I mean, I know it's just.
Oh, thank you.
It doesn't sound like it's a. But yeah, they're rags. I don't know what to tell you. They're
olive oil and rags. Thank
yeah,
you. I'm going to cherish.
Rags.
I need rags. I need olive oil.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure working with you. Chuck Hughes. He's great, eh? How good.
Thank you so much.